The Dakota Access Pipeline. Okay, now that you're done being viscerally angry, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the facts, misconceptions, and, well, there's no point in sugarcoating it, misinformation surrounding this issue. The pipeline protests have become a tangled web of different arguments, from water protection to racism, from protecting native lands to anti-big oil. So let's take a moment to examine each of these arguments and see which ones really stand up. The Dakota Access Pipeline will be an 1,172-mile-long crude oil pipeline traveling from the Bakken oil fields of North Dakota to Patoka, Illinois, traveling through 4 states. Yeah, I said it will be. As of recording this video, it's 92% complete. If you really think they're just going to stop now and cut their losses, sorry to burst your bubble. Now, like me until about a week ago, you probably think that's a really long pipeline. I mean, it's over 1,000 miles. So take a moment and think of a number. How many miles of pipeline do you think there are in the United States? Your estimate's probably a little low. I've played this game before, so you probably know that you're lowballing it. Let me give you a point of reference. America has by far the most pipeline of any country in the world. America! Yeah! Coming in second is Russia with 161,000 miles. So knowing that, go ahead and refine your estimate. Did you guess 2.4 million? Because it's 2.4 million. But that's total, oil and natural gas. Here's a map. When it comes to just oil, we have about 135,000 miles. That's enough to wrap around the equator 5.5 times. If you want to know about just crude oil, since that's what the Dakota Access Pipeline will be, as of 2015 we had 72,563 miles. The Dakota Access Pipeline will add this much to our national pipeline infrastructure. That's not a lot. In fact, during the entire Obama administration, we built about 2.5 to 3 Dakota Access pipelines every year. Now, if you decide to do your own research on the pipeline, you're inevitably going to come across this map, made by Carl Sack for the Huffington Post. I don't normally inject my own opinions into videos, but this is by far the most biased map full of misinformation that I've ever seen. How can a map be biased? Well, let's go ahead and start untangling. First of all, the pipeline does not travel through any native lands. Period. It just doesn't. Now, what this map does try to portray is that it travels through unceded Sioux territory from the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie. And by this map, it doesn't look like that much more, really, just a few miles extended out from the current Standing Rock Reservation. But this map is pretty misleading. Here are the actual lands given to the Sioux by the 1851 treaty. As you can see, it's quite a bit larger than what the map portrays. And this is only the lands given to the Sioux by the treaty. The treaty also gives lands to the Crow, Hidatsa, Arikara, Cheyenne, and Pawnee. The treaty was, at least in part, designed to draw borders to stop them from fighting each other. Sorry to burst your bubble here, but Native Americans are people too. They fought with each other just as much as they fought with white people. While white settlers and miners did violate the treaty, the Sioux also violated the treaty by attacking the Arikara in 1853 and the Crow shortly afterwards. It didn't seem to be respected by anyone, really, so I'm not entirely sure why he picked the 1851 treaty. Perhaps it's because older makes it seem more legitimate. But personally, if I were going to go with a treaty to claim as unceded territory, I'd go with the 1868 Treaty of Fort Laramie. This one actually calls the land surrounding the newly formed Great Sioux Reservation unceded, an area which now resides in 7 states. Just a side note, here's a map of all the pipelines in the United States again, and here are the lands given to them by the 1868 treaty. As you can see, there are several pipelines which already cross that area. But in all likelihood, he didn't use the 1868 treaty because it doesn't put the reservation's northern border in North Dakota. That didn't happen until 1877 with the treaty that ended the Black Hills War. This treaty does cede that territory. This is the war when Custer lost at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Over the next few decades, there were several treaties and congressional acts which carved up the Sioux Reservation into smaller parts for each of the individual tribes within the Sioux. By 1910, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe was left with this, and it's stayed pretty much the same ever since. So let's go back to this map. He covers up the area where the pipeline comes pretty close to the reservation before crossing Missouri River with these little teepees, one of which he calls the 1851 Treaty Camp. I'm going to be frank here and just say that I have no idea what he means by that. The 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie was signed in, well, Fort Laramie, which is in Wyoming. In all of my research, even the sources he cites on this map, I can't find what he means by that, so I'm left with Occam's razor. He just wanted to cover up the area to make it a little more difficult to see what's actually going on. Here is a satellite map of the same area. The Standing Rock Reservation lies entirely within Sioux County, North Dakota, the bottom left third of the map. And a pipeline travels along this blue line. As you can see, it comes within about 5 miles of the reservation, but never actually enters it. And you can see the current protest camp below the county line. Now let's talk about this supposed original route that he drew with a dashed line. The implication here is that they rerouted the pipeline in order to protect the water for Bismarck. I've spent several days researching the information for this video and even got into contact with someone who works for Dakota Access. I even double-checked the sources that he cites on his map. I can find no evidence that the pipeline was ever rerouted to protect white people water or otherwise. Perhaps that's what he means by participant observation? The idea that the pipeline was rerouted in order to protect the water for white people while ignoring the impact on native people is ridiculous. I've shown you this map several times so far, but as you can clearly see, there are countless pipelines that cross just about every river in the United States, including the Missouri, both before and after the reservation. But let's take a closer look at North Dakota. Actually, wait a second. Before I do that, some of you with a keen eye might have noticed this pipeline, and you probably said to yourself, hey, I know that one. That's the Dakota Access Pipeline. Except it isn't. Yeah, I'm about to tell you exactly what you think I am. Remember this? And a pipeline travels along this blue line. I said a pipeline, not the pipeline. This map is from 2015, and this blue line is not the Dakota Access Pipeline. It's the Northern Border Natural Gas Pipeline. This is why the Dakota Access Pipeline was never rerouted. It was always going to go this route. It parallels the Northern Border Pipeline, which was built in 1982, the entire way. Why? Because this route was already cleared of environmental and cultural impact 33 years ago. It was reused a few years later for high voltage electrical transmission lines where it had to go through the same scrutiny. The Dakota Access Pipeline is the third time the same route had to be cleared of environmental and cultural impact, and this shouldn't be a surprise, it was approved. This is North Dakota Highway 1806, where the protesters often form blockades in order to halt construction. This is also where the Dakota Access Pipeline will travel. Can you spot the existing Northern Border Pipeline? I'll give you a hint. You probably drive by these things several times a day without knowing what they are. This valve is the currently existing Northern Border Pipeline. That's it. It's about 3 to 4 feet underground, just like the Dakota Access Pipeline will be. And off in the distance, you can see the high voltage electrical transmission lines, which are more of a visual blight on the landscape than the pipeline really, but had to go through the same scrutiny. But let's go back to the idea that the pipeline is somehow racist and will threaten native water but not white people water. Here's North Dakota. The Standing Rock Reservation is in Sioux County, here. This is the Missouri River, and this is the capital, Bismarck. Let's start off with the natural gas pipelines in the state. As you can see, the only one that travels between Bismarck and the reservation is the Northern Border. But natural gas pipelines don't spill, they explode. So again, let's take a look at crude oil pipelines. Again, several pipelines cross the Missouri, well before Bismarck and even in Bismarck, which is the home of the Tesoro refinery. After it's refined into gasoline, it crosses the Missouri, just like the Cenex pipeline up to the north. To say that the Dakota Access Pipeline was rerouted in order to protect the water of Bismarck, while there's a pipeline in Bismarck, is just ridiculous. So let's put the racial issues aside. What about protecting water in general? Well, that's where I have to say that technically yes, the pipeline does pose a threat, but let's examine that threat. First of all, it can only affect surface water, not aquifers. It simply isn't deep enough to damage those. So when a tribal representative in Iowa said this, as a people that have lived in North America for thousands of years, we have environmental concerns about the land and drinking water. Our main concern is Iowa's aquifers might be significantly damaged, and it will only take one mistake and life in Iowa will change for the next thousands of years. We think that should be protected because it is the water that gives Iowa the best way of life. Not only is that simply not true, but I'd like to draw your attention to this map again. Can you even find Iowa on this map? I know I haven't been paying much attention to the issue before this, but I don't seem to remember the same amount of protesting for the currently 30,000 miles of pipeline in Iowa, which also pose no threat to the aquifers. Pipelines simply aren't deep enough underground. So let's talk about the threat that they pose to surface water. Here's where we have to talk about relative risk. Even if you're anti-oil or anti-fossil fuels, that's still primarily what our country runs on. So the oil has to get from point A to point B. Pipelines are by far the safest method to do that. Every time a pipeline ruptures and spills, it releases on average 10,000 gallons of oil. A pipeline spill is incredibly easy to stop. There are hundreds of places along the pipeline that detect leaks and shut it down. This isn't the Deepwater Horizon where we can't control the flow. Now I know 10,000 gallons sounds like a lot, but it really isn't. To put it into perspective, an Olympic-sized swimming pool is 660,000 gallons. There would have to be 21,000 pipeline spills in order to match the BP oil spill in 2010. In the entire lifetime of all the pipelines in the United States, they have not released that much oil. It would only take 5,500 spills in order to match the Exxon Valdez. 10,000 gallons of oil is actually pretty quick and easy to clean up. But the pipeline is being built in order to replace how we currently move oil. trucking, and rail. First of all, even if they don't spill, trucking and rail put off tons of emissions. So even if they work perfectly, which they don't, they still harm the environment. Rail accidents spill just as much oil as pipelines do every year, but trucking spills twice as much. An oil tanker truck carries 9,000 gallons of oil, and there are 2 accidents involving spills in the United States every day. The pipeline will take those trucks off the road and eliminate the need for moving it by rail. It is by far the safest and cheapest method of moving oil from A to B. Again, even if you are adamantly against fossil fuels, it's still what our country primarily runs on, so the spice must flow. Even if we started building solar, wind, and even better, nuclear power plants, we would still need oil for the next few years. Side note, nuclear power is by far the most prolific and safest form of energy we have, but I'll make a video on that some other time. So with the pipeline not intruding on native lands, ceded or unceded, without it damaging native cultural sites, and knowing that it's certainly not the first pipeline to pose a threat to our water, and that threat is actually the lesser evil of all the available options, what exactly are the protesters protesting? Well, they are self-proclaimed water protectors, which, let's face it, is just a marketing strategy. Everyone, even oil barons, are pro-water. Water protector sounds much better than pipeline protester, but as we've discussed, the threat to the water supply is pretty close to nil, and it's a greatly reduced threat compared to what we currently use. To be anti-pipeline is to be pro-trucking. There's just no other way to put it. Also, the pipeline is being built on private land, not native land. The private landholders have signed voluntary easements in order to allow the pipeline to be constructed. This is the same land that already has a natural gas pipeline and an interstate power transmission line, so why not? An easement is a form of eminent domain where the private landholder is still the owner, but the government or the company pays rent in order to have the pipeline go through. Only this wasn't eminent domain, this was completely voluntary. This is important to remember because that means every time the protesters form a barricade to halt construction, they are actually trespassing on private land, and the police have a duty to remove those people if the landowner wants them gone. It's the same as if protesters were in your backyard. They've also been blocking traffic along the highway, most notably the one I showed you before, Highway 1806, and the police have a duty to keep those roads clear for travel. So even if you agree with the protests, and you absolutely have a right to protest under the First Amendment, you don't have the right to protest on private land or block transportation. I'm not going to address the violence of the protests in this video because it goes both ways and it's riddled by fake news. With fake news being such a problem on the internet lately, you have to take everything that you read and even see with a grain of salt. But hey, before we finish this video, make sure to visit the Standing Rock Amazon wish list, where you can help them out by donating things like gas masks, body armor, and beef jerky. You know, the essentials. Wait, Tonka Bites, an authentic Native American recipe. I wonder who makes that. Oh, it's a company in Kyle, South Dakota, smack in the middle of the Pine Ridge Sioux Reservation. Please help us by buying us our own beef jerky. Definitely nothing shady about that. So again, what are they protesting? Is it a just cause, or is it just because? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Or is this no DAPL hashtag just the protest du jour? Another slacktivist cause that everyone can get behind because all it requires is a Facebook like and share. You may remember this cause from a few years ago. I know, it's so 2000 and late, but Coney 2012 was an easy catchphrase for people to like and support, especially because it required them to do nothing else. So is no DAPL just the DAPL 2016 to 2012's Coney? Maybe, maybe not, but they sure share a lot of the same characteristics. History often repeats itself, so maybe this will just be replaced by some other fairly universal cause next year. But hopefully next time you see someone share some misinformation about how the pipeline is bulldozing through some archaeological sites, or a report on an explosion or spill as an example of how dangerous pipelines are, hopefully now you'll know better. Hey guys, if you enjoyed that video or you learned something, make sure to give that like button a click. If you'd like to see more from me, I put out new videos every weekend, so go ahead and protest that subscribe button. But in the meantime, if you'd like to see one of my older videos, how about this one?